Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet.
Yo, मेरे को
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So today we are continuing with a discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto. And in the second canto, there is a steady progression of wanting us to understand the nature of Sambandha. Sambandha is relationship, it is Gyan, it is basically an awareness, and this awareness is presented by coming in touch with Krishna. So one comes in touch and is inspired through various means. One comes in touch through a devotee, the Guru. The Guru, both Siksha and Diksha, have the ability to attract the mind of the soul. They have the ability for Akarshana. The power that is provided to the Guru, both Siksha and Diksha, is Yogamaya, and Sri Yogamaya, who is the internal potency of Krishna, particularly draws the soul towards the Siksha and Diksha principles. And this is basically Krishna facilitating the soul coming closer to his relationship. So the idea is that there is interaction. The interaction of Krishna with jivas, the interaction of Krishna and different leelas, interaction of Krishna even in circumstances such as the killing of demons in Vraja. This is all facilitated by the internal potency. It is not the external potency. So even, for example, killing of demons in Vraja, killing of Putana, these are circumstances that are facilitated by the internal potency of the Lord. He doesn't deal with the external potency. As a consequence, the internal potency draws souls to the Siksha and Diksha Gurus, who are personifications of the Paramatma. The Paramatma is facilitating the journey of the soul. As a consequence, the Paramatma is using the Siksha and Diksha Gurus as an instrument to draw souls towards him. And this drawing power is facilitated through Yogamaya. Yoga, in essence, is to come together. Yoga is to come together. So the purpose of Yogamaya is to draw the soul and bring the soul closer to Krishna so that the soul could develop a deeper understanding and eventually begin service, begin interacting with the Supreme Person. So in other words, this whole process is facilitated by the internal potency, and being facilitated by the internal potency, it is an organic process. It's very organic. So as the soul is drawn closer and closer to Krishna through the Siksha and Diksha Gurus, the whole idea is to increase Krishna Sambandha. The prospect of Krishna Sambandha increases in the heart of the soul based on the sound vibrations emanating from the Siksha and Diksha connections. If the Siksha and Diksha connection have a very deep understanding, if the Guru has a very deep understanding of Sambandha, that Sambandha has the ability to enter into our ears and establish itself in our heart. And it destroys nescience and draws us closer to the original principle of service. So the idea is that the idea of Sambandha Gyan being received by coming in touch with the spiritual master is through the principle of sound vibrations and instructions on chanting of Nam, instructions on facilitation of devotional service by giving power for the devotee to move forward. All of this is being facilitated by Guru Tattva, And the idea is this whole facilitation is done through their own ability of being able to offer Sambandha Gyan. So if the Guru has very deep Sambandha, then they have the ability to offer Sambandha. Yeah. When Mahaprabhu was walking in the forests of Jarikanda, yeah, it is, I think Jarikanda is our present day Jharkhand, they call it, and it is in the eastern side of India. As he was walking through the forest where he was traveling, at that point in time, he came across animals, and the animals received Krishna consciousness through the presence of Mahaprabhu. They started chanting. So fundamentally, the ability of the animal to even perceive and overcome very dense consciousness and to participate in the journey of spiritual life was facilitated because it was Krishna himself, Lord Chaitanya, right? Srila Prabhupada sat in Tompkins Park and he started chanting. When he started chanting, he was practically, through the sound vibrations of Nam, through the sound vibrations of different levels of preaching, he was actually facilitating Sambandha Gyan, because the sound vibrations, because of the fact that they were pure and also contained his Sambandha with Krishna, which is very deep, with all kinds of actual experiences of the Lord in different leelas. Because of all those very deep experiences, the sound traveled around the globe. And even before the 108 temples were built around the world, the faith and the sound had already reached there in certain ways. In other words, the plan was already laid out and Sambandha Gyan was already given. The devotees, the early disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they were very young and in fact very inexperienced in matters of Vedic science, very inexperienced in temple management. They were very young, basically. They were not exposed to anything that one could call was remotely resembled what Srila Prabhupada wanted them to do. But the potency of Srila Prabhupada was such that the Sambandha in his heart was such that when he gave them instructions and he gave them the duties to perform, and when he facilitated them by giving them initiation, he also gave them his Sambandha. There was one question that was raised saying one has to have some religious disposition. There has to be some basic following of Dharma before one could come in touch with Krishna consciousness. In other words, one needs to be on a foundation of the mode of goodness before one could reach transcendence. Yeah? Dharma is typically enacted in the mode of goodness. It is very strongly understood and enacted in the mode of goodness. So one has to be at least in the mode of goodness. One has to be in the principle and the foundation of Dharma before they could enact Krishna consciousness. So there was a question that was raised to Srila Prabhupada by one of his disciples. I don't remember whom. He asked him that this is basically a fact that one has to receive and go through religious observations, or rather have empowerment and act out of Dharma. It's only then can one come out and then be able to establish themselves in Krishna consciousness, because the Sukriti has to be there. Yeah, there has to be an accumulation of credits, and those credits themselves form the foundation of positive thought. And then the positive thought and being in a proper platform attracts one to positive things. It facilitates the journey. Srila Prabhupada, how is it possible that we, who came from the backgrounds we came from, could come into this movement and start moving forward in Krishna consciousness, because we did not come from strong backgrounds of Dharma. Yeah, they had no notion, basically, in the countries they grew up, of Vedic science and Vedic Dharma, etc. In that sense. Srila Prabhupada said, I gave you Dharma. So Srila Prabhupada said, I gave you credits. He was giving them credits, and after giving them credits, he was giving them Sambandha. So he practically facilitated the journey right from the foundational level. So this is to be understood. The reason why we are mentioning this in the context is Sambandha is received through those who have Sambandha. You cannot give if you do not have. You cannot give anything if you do not have. Yeah? So if you are chanting Harinam, and Harinam that we are chanting is offensive, then that is all we can give. If we are chanting Namabas, then that is all we can give. If we are chanting Shuddhanam, then that is all we can give. Because you cannot give, or we cannot give, what is not available in the first place. It has to come and then can be distributed. So in that sense, our japa and our own sadhana is also instrumental in our ability to be able to distribute Krishna consciousness. One cannot really say that you can go and do things without being able to have the ability first. The facilitation of chanting, the facilitation of initiation, the process of initiation is to give us the ability to develop deeper sambandha. So the Guru offers sambandha gyan. The Guru offers sambandha gyan. This is in fact a process of pancha samskara. The 5 different samskaras that are done traditionally is the name, which is the name given to the devotee. Vaishnav Das, Vaishnav Dasi, for example, Krishna Das, Krishna Dasi. Then it is the Nam, that is Harinam. Then there is Mantra, which is the Gayathri. And then there is the worship of the deity. And then there is also one other factor. Yes, these are the 5 different factors. So basically, the worship of the deity, when the Guru says, I'm going to ask you to worship a deity, in the ages beyond, in the past, the Guru literally used to give a deity to the disciple. He used to say, worship this deity. Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita when he gave the Govardhan Shila for Srila Raghunath Das Goswami to worship. The Govardhan Shila that was given by Mahaprabhu contained his sambandha. So he gave the deity, and along with the deity, he gave Srila Raghunath Das Goswami his sambandha of the deity. So the idea of giving sambandha gyan was to give a deity to the disciple so that the disciple could worship the deity and thereby gain what we would call deeper sambandha gyan. This was facilitated in the past. Srila Prabhupada, however, built temples around the world, and his sambandha gyan was given through taking the devotees and entrusting the care of the deities to the devotees in respective yatras. Depending on the yatra which the devotees came from, the temples and the preaching centers had specific deities. Srila Prabhupada used to connect them to the deity, and as a consequence, they could move forward. Yeah. So I forgot the 5th principle in Pancha Samskara. It just came to me. Urdhva Pundra. This tilak that is put. After initiation, you're supposed to wear the tilak in the 12 different spots with specific mantras, and this is also a part of the initiation process. So the Pancha Samskara is tilak, deity, nam, mantra, and basically all of these put together form the Pancha Samskara principle. Now, the name of the deity as well. Yeah. So Harinam, name of the disciple, which is Vaishnav Das, Vaishnav Dasi, and then you have the Gayatri Mantra, which is also the mantra, and then you also have the facilitation of worship of the deity. All of this constitutes the Sambandha Gyan. This is also a mark, the Urdhva Pundra. It's called Urdhva Pundra in Sanskrit. This is also a mark that is owned by the Vaishnavas. This is done through process of initiation. This is to facilitate deeper Sambandha. Yeah. So we say that this is the lotus feet of the divine couple, and then there is Tulsi. Different kinds of tilak you find even in Vrindavan. Different temples, different Vaishnavas wear different types of tilaks. Even amongst the Goswamis, you have different types of tilaks you find here in Vrindavan with the different temples that are associated. So this is some Sambandha that's also being given through the tilak formation. So it's so important. All of these are basically ornaments that bring us closer to Krishna consciousness. So the process of all of this is to facilitate a deeper understanding of our relationship with Krishna. So chapters 1 through 7 of the 2nd canto are ultimately leading us towards a firm knowledge of Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan requires knowledge of Chit, which is what is to be known, that is our original relationship with Krishna and the activities that we perform in the spiritual sky. Achit, which is that which is a part of the phenomenal world, the material world. Even though it's temporary, it's real. We are enacting with each other. We are distributing books. We are doing so many things here, so we can't really say that it is unreal. It is real. It is a creation of Krishna. It's temporary. It's temporary to facilitate the journey. Now, a knowledge of material world, a knowledge of the spiritual sky is Chit, knowledge of the material world and the phenomena here is Achit. And then you have basically Krishna himself. So all of this constitutes Sambandha Gyan. So there is Chit, Achit, and then Krishna. So basically all of this together constitutes Sambandha. So our relationship, who we are, who is Krishna, our relationship with Krishna. So primarily, the whole prospect of any kind of religion, bona fide religion, is to ultimately lead the soul towards reaching a point of wanting to connect to Krishna through Krishna Sambandha. So basically wanting to connect to Krishna through the different aspects of knowing who they are, who is Krishna, and eventually connecting them. This is basically the fundamental purpose of religion, even though it doesn't appear so, because people generally focus on the externalities. They focus on the externalities of what a religion does, but the general purpose of any bona fide religion is for them to facilitate Sambandha, Krishna Sambandha. So you can observe the bona fidity, or rather you can observe what we would call the qualities of a certain religious practice by seeing how it is facilitating Sambandha. They may not know Krishna by his name as Krishna, but are they facilitating Sambandha Gyan? Are they building in a deeper analysis, deeper awareness of the connection of the soul to God? You see, they may not really call him by that name, but it's closer. So are they really facilitating? So this is the whole purpose. Now, chapters 1 through 7, we saw this delineation. Now in chapter 8, Parīkṣit Maharaj is asking questions. Panipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Yeah. Panipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Basically, the idea is that questions are needed to be asked to clarify doubts. When a speaker as accomplished as Sukadev Goswami is sitting to speak, and someone who is a student as accomplished as Parīkṣit Maharaj, there should be an exchange. It is interactive. It is not a situation where one does not ask questions. One certainly asks questions. One certainly asks questions, but one does not doubt what is being said. There's a big difference. One does not doubt the speaker. One does not doubt the qualifications of the speaker. One does not doubt the qualifications of the speaker where they become disrespectful. Sometimes we see this. Make someone sit on the Vyasasana. Yeah. If you make someone sit on the Vyasasana, please hear them out. Please hear them out, regardless of who they are. It is highly disrespectful to the Vyasasana to put someone on the Vyasasana and then disrespect them. The first step is don't put everybody in the Vyasasana. If you're putting someone in the Vyasasana, respect them. Yeah. So that should be the principle. We should always follow. We should be very careful. If someone is given an opportunity to share things, then respect them, regardless of how proficient they are and how powerful their ideas may be. They're sitting in the Vyasasana. Even if they were to read the verse, the translation, and the purport, there's a lot to gain by sincerely hearing from someone who is very sincere. So doubts should not be there. In the efficacy and the quality of the speaker, there should be no doubts. Yeah, there shouldn't be doubts. In other words, that becomes disrespectful. And most people, when they used to listen in the bygone ages, they used to go to places of inspiration. They used to go to places of inspiration. Those days, there was no Zoom. There wasn't even, I would say, city temples. Everybody had their Gurukul. There were no Bhagavatam copies. Bhagavatam copies, Srimad Bhagavatam copies were very, very rare. Because they were so rare, there were not many who had access to them. As a consequence, you had to go and submit yourself to a spiritual master who invariably was a simple person who lived in an ashram, slightly away from the activities of the city or the town. And you had to submit yourself for years so that one could learn Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully. Now, in the present context, Srimad Bhagavatam has been made very easily available. One has it in their phone. What to say of having copies of the book, but everybody has it in their phone, their tablets, call it whatever you want. So as a consequence, mercy has certainly been extended. But as mercy has been extended, there's also been a deterioration of understanding that this is mercy. Oftentimes, one says that familiarity breeds contempt. So we are contemptuous of the availability of Shastra. Srila Prabhupada facilitated all of this, and then now it's even more easily available on our little phones and iPads or whatever it is that we use. And we have become contemptuous. We don't really take it seriously. This is the personification of Krishna. And we don't even take the speaker seriously. In many cases, we don't. Yeah, we don't. So those days, people went because they had faith and they were inspired. Inspiration is very important because inspiration means the Yogamaya principle is in operation. Inspiration means the Yogamaya principle is in operation. As a consequence, this is Krishna's arrangement as a consequence to give us deeper Sambandha Gyan. So people used to take everybody very seriously in terms of the opportunity that was there to speak. Now, in the 8th canto, we find that there's the 8th chapter of the 2nd canto, there is a whole chapter which has been dedicated just to questions, not answers. It is the 9th chapter which has the answers. In the 9th chapter, we hear very deep responses from Srila Sukadeva Goswami. In the 8th chapter of the 2nd canto, we are going to hear what the questions are. And these questions are being submitted in a manner of someone who really wants to understand things. And this is also being given to us by someone who is going to die. You know, we all are going to take seriously when someone is going to die, that person's notions and whatever they intend to do, we pay attention to it, not because of any other reason. It is just that they don't have much time left. As a consequence, you want to pay attention to what they are and what they have done, etc. In Parīkṣit Maharaj's case, here was someone who was not going to be involved in any task that was meaningless because he was going to die. He was going to leave the world. And as a consequence, his questions were quite profound. Then there was a spiritual master such as Sukadeva Goswami, who had the capacity to directly repeat Srila Vyasadev's instructions, who had the capacity to talk out of experience, not just faith, experience. Yeah? So now this was a very, very different arrangement. As a consequence, this whole chapter is dedicated to questions. And these questions are mixed. They are mixed in such a way that some of these questions deal with matter, which is the phenomenon that is seen in the world. So there are questions of the purpose of Varnashram. There are questions of the journey of the soul. There are questions of why did the soul even develop into a, why did the soul even become, materially conditioned? Yeah. We use the word eternal because the word eternally conditioned essentially means that for a time span of the material universes and the material creation is eternal in that sense. Yeah. And that for that time span, this person has been conditioned, the soul has been conditioned. As a consequence, he asks about the journey of the entrapment of the material condition of the soul. Why is it that we are entrapped? All these answers are being shared in the subsequent chapter. In this chapter, there are questions. So the point I want to raise here is that first, there has to be inspiration. Second, there has to be this notion that one has to be very careful in coming in touch with Guru Tattva. And as a consequence, questions can be asked, but there should not be a doubt in terms of the qualities of the speaker. There shouldn't be a doubt in terms of wanting to disrespect. So the questions that are raised out of doubts that come in mind, meaning that, is he really speaking, making sense? Because I don't really think so. Then those questions themselves have to be deliberated, thought about. One of the best ways to do it is to accept things first and then deliberate and then come back when we are in a better time, better mindset. Because the first assumption and the safer assumption to make is that we haven't understood what is being said. Now, this may all sound like, what is the point? What if we run away from circumstances where you need to ask questions, but then these are, where we feel that the speaker himself or herself is wrong? But the point is that always follow a safer principle. Always follow a safer principle, because questions get answered in our movement through service. Questions get answered through an internal process of Yogamaya. We have to understand this. That is the reason I'm bringing in the whole topic of Guru being facilitated by the internal potency of the Lord to bring the soul closer to Krishna. The questions in our heart and the doubts that arise and the clarification of experiences in the world as we act through and we realize scripture, it is all a facilitation of Sri Yoga Maya. As a consequence, it is always through seva. It is with the mood of service, of submitting oneself, that one gets answers in our movement. Our movement is not an intellectual movement. It is a movement of service. It is an intellectual movement in the sense that we are very clear. We are very clear, most clear about Shastra and the conclusions of Shastra. So don't mistake my words when I say we are not an intellectual movement. When I use the word we are not an intellectual movement, I particularly mean that our purpose is to basically submit ourselves and to depend and to ask questions in that particular mood. And that is our glory. Our movement is all about being able to submit ourselves and receive mercy. That is what is the strength that is being given. So that is what everybody followed before us. We also need to follow the same principle, that when we are posing questions, then we would want to ensure that it is not done disrespectfully. And this is basically what is being seen by Parīkṣit Maharaj. There are a whole chapter of questions. All kinds of questions are being asked. But at the same time, he is so qualified, and the Sukadeva Goswami's position is so qualified in the heart of Parīkṣit Maharaj, that the answers themselves are being given wonderfully. So again, the facilitation of service, facilitation of sambandha in our movement is a function of the internal potency of the Lord. To draw mercy from the internal potency, the Lord doesn't control Bhakti Devi. Even the Lord doesn't control Bhakti Devi. It is the devotee who basically has control. As a consequence, in our movement, it is always the service principle that draws mercy, and as a consequence, our doubts about Krishna Sambandha get clear. I just want to be very clear. Scholarship cannot take us closer to Krishna. We are not dependent on scholarship. Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, the spiritual master of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was illiterate. But his Krishna Sambandha was so deep that a great scholar such as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur chose to submit himself fully at the lotus feet of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. That is the principle of our movement. Yeah? Seva is the principle of our movement. Surrender, submission and seva. And as a consequence, the heart of the devotee who holds Krishna Sambandha opens up and says, okay, your qualities are wonderful. As a consequence, I must take what I have. I have something very precious. I must take what I have and I must share it with you. So the point which I'm trying to make is that we must be very careful when we are approaching Krishna Sambandha, because it is facilitated by Bhakti Devi, the internal potency of the Lord. As a consequence, she is not controlled by the Lord. She facilitates the Lord's service, seva, etc. She facilitates the interaction of Krishna independently. She is basically in the heart of the devotee. And because the devotee himself, whom we serve, decides and chooses to give us mercy, we receive that mercy because Bhakti Devi is in the heart of the devotee. She travels and then facilitates sambandha. Yeah? So I just want to be sure that we understand that scholarship is not the objective of this movement as much as it's useful for someone to read. Yes, but then are they going to get Krishna Sambandha just by reading? The answer is no. Yeah, the answer is no. They are going to get Krishna Sambandha by service to one who has Krishna Sambandha. Because the one who has Krishna Sambandha, he can basically think that this devotee requires mercy. That thought is enough for Krishna Sambandha to come into our heart. So this principle has to be known and it has to be observed very clearly, because we want to understand that as much as we would want to proclaim scholarship as being wonderful, it has no value in the spiritual sky if it cannot bring about the mood of seva. It has no value. It has no value. There are so many umpteen examples in Chaitanya Charitamrita of great scholars being put down. Great scholars. Why is it being given to us about Kashmir? Pandit, yeah? Keshav Kashmiri, the Pandit who came from Kashmir. He wanted to destroy, he wanted to basically bring the reputation down of everyone. He was defeated by Mahaprabhu. Mother Saraswati herself comes and says, no, don't go there. This is my master. Yeah. So he was defeated. So Mahaprabhu basically demonstrated very clearly that it is seva. It is seva, it is submission, and a desire of wanting to serve the Vaishnava, that brings about Krishna Sambandha. And that mood of Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya is far more valuable than any kind of knowledge that one may gather through the reading of books. So one always needs to remember that the more and more they crave Krishna Sambandha, they have to position themselves in such a way that they receive mercy. Yeah, that is being seen in this chapter. There are lots of questions, but all of them are being asked in a very submissive mood. Yeah, so let us read the chapter's questions, and then we will take questions ourselves. King Parīkṣit inquired from Sukadev Goswami, how did Narad...
Prabhuji, Prabhuji,
Yes.
which verse?
Which chapter 8 of the second canto?
Verse number start.
First verse. Yeah. King Parīkṣit inquired from Sukadev Goswami, how did Narad Muni, whose hearers are as fortunate as those instructed by Lord Brahma, explain the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without material qualities, and before whom did he speak? Shri Narad Muni is a very, very special incarnation of the Lord, whose business is to give bhakti. So you find him involved in the life of Dhruva Maharaj, great accomplisher. You find him involved in Prahlad Maharaj's life. You will find him in different parts of Srimad Bhagavatam. You will find him instructing Sri Valmiki to write Ramayana. Yeah? Before Sri Valmiki wrote Sri Ramayana, Narad Muni had to be there. He had to facilitate him. He had to say, begin, please. So the power to offer service and to share the glories of Krishna come from Sri Narad Muni. You know, my heart really bleeds when I see him being depicted in a very comic fashion by, I would say, you know, in generally the general colloquial, I would say, media or whatever it is they display, they kind of display him as someone who is a comic. In fact, what is at his lotus feet is not attainable by worshipping anybody else. He is the most worshipable spiritual master because he basically facilitates bhakti. And he facilitates bhakti in such a way, in such a powerful way, that he is always involved in one of the most strategic positions. He's always there. Yeah. So this is basically fantastic to see that Sri Narad Muni is involved here. Gauranga Mahaprabhu used to spend the entire day listening to Dhruva Charita and to Prahlad Charita. He used to request Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu to speak. He used to request Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu speak on Dhruva Charita and Prahlad Charita. He used to hear Dhruva Charita, Prahlad Charita throughout the day. Yeah, and he used to repeat them. And he was so attached to it. The point which I'm trying to make is that in both the case of Dhruva and Sri Prahlad Maharaj, both of these circumstances, they were initiated and facilitated by Sri Narad Muni. And you will see him being involved in all the critical points throughout the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we should be very careful in understanding his position. His is one of the most profound, greatest position in the lineage because he has practically facilitated Srimad Bhagavatam. He facilitated Ramayana. You can't imagine what these contributions are. So it's just an empowered incarnation of the Lord. Yeah. So here, Sri Narad Muni is being brought here saying, Parīkṣit Maharaj is inquiring, how did Narad Muni, whose hearers are as fortunate as those instructed by Lord Brahma, explain the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without material qualities, and before whom did he speak? The king said, I wish to know. Narrations concerning the Lord who possesses wonderful potencies are certainly auspicious for living beings in all planets. O greatly fortunate Sukadev Goswami, please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. What is freedom from material qualities? What is the other word for freedom from material qualities? The other word for freedom from material qualities is anartha nivritti. One who hears Srimati Bhagavatam from someone whose sambandha is deeper and who is sincerely coming in the lineage of Srila, Vyasadeva, Sukadev Goswami, they have the ability to completely relieve themselves of the anarthas and go through the process of anartha nivritti simply by hearing. Yeah? Hearing leads to destruction of material nations, and as a consequence, one then receives sambandha they become very impelled, they become very, very fortunate in being able to take up devotional service with great, I would say, enthusiasm. The strength of devotional service comes due to sambandha. It comes due to hearing from someone who basically has sambandha. Yeah. So anartha nivritti, giving up of material conditioning and material qualities, is accomplished by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifested in their hearts within a short time. Yeah, this is fascinating. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, is a sound incarnation, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. So they're comparing this to the rains of the autumn. So there has been rainfall before. There's been the regular monsoon, and there's been regular monsoon, and because there's been regular monsoon, the water has become very muddy. But then there is the autumn season that comes in after regular monsoon, where the rains come, but they're quite light. The rains come, but they're quite light. And as a consequence, the light rains pushes the mud away, and the muddy water becomes clear. So there's some potency from that. So it's so wonderful that autumn rains basically clears away all the mud. Yeah. So now basically they're talking about the same circumstance of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. A pure devotee of the Lord, whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service, never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him, as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. Now this statement is extraordinarily profound. Why would someone who is a pure devotee, whose heart has been cleansed once and never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, why would they never relinquish? Why is the statement being made? They would never relinquish because the sambandha is there. If you know which street in Vrindavan your house is, Goloka Vrindavan, which street the house is, if you know who your parents are in Vrindavan, which village you belong to, if you know under whom you serve, under whose authority you serve, amongst the closest associates of the divine couple, and you also occasionally have glimpses of the extraordinary nature of spiritual activities in Braja, whilst being in this material body, then how is that person ever going to relinquish the lotus feet of Krishna? This person now has sambandha. This person now knows where they are. It is like telling someone that once you become the parent of a child, you will never relinquish that position. Why? Because now you have sambandha. As a consequence, you know that this is the sambandha and you're going to facilitate it. If you're aware of who you are in the spiritual sky, and you understand the specific relationship that you are in, and you're engaging in service and you're being guided by one who is very close to Krishna, then how is it possible for someone to fall back from that knowledge? So it is not only just knowledge, it is also experiences. So how do you fall away from that? You don't. So this is a very, very important verse as well. O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. So these are questions. These are questions by Parīkṣit Maharaj. O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Will you kindly explain this, for it is known to you? The answer is going to come in the next chapter, but these are the questions. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen the lotus stem sprouted, is possessed of a gigantic body according to his own caliber and measurement, then what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of common living entities? What is the specific difference? Yeah, he also has a body, The living entities have a body. So what's the difference between that body and this body? Brahma, who was not born of a material source, but of the lotus flower coming out of the navel abdomen of the Lord, is the creator of all those who are materially born. Of course, by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to see the form of the Lord. Yeah. So the navel abdomen, he is called Ajar. Yeah. He is also called Swayambhu. Swayambhu means he is self-manifest. He has appeared out of Krishna with no parent. In other words, there isn't what we would call a parent in the context of having a mother and father. He was created by the Lord's will, so he is Swayambhu, self-manifest. And he has come from the navel of the great Vishnu, who lies in the Garbhodaka ocean. So the question is, he was able to see the form of the Lord. Yeah, he was able to see the form of the Lord. He was able to see him. He went down searching. He went down searching. He wanted to see what is my origin. It is the mercy of the Lord that revealed his form to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma was not cognizant in the beginning. This we learn in the first chapter of this canto. Lord Brahma himself was not cognizant as to who he was and what duties he had. He had to develop sambandha. So he starts with the very basic level of meditating on the universal form. Then he meditates on the supersoul. Slowly he gets to the point of understanding that these are Purusha incarnations. One of the Purusha incarnations of the three has a lotus stem sprouting from his navel abdomen, and I am sitting on top of the lotus. This is progressive Sambandha Gyan of Lord Brahma. He tells this to Srinarad Muni. Please also explain the personality of Godhead who lies in every heart as the super soul and as the Lord of all energies and is untouched by his external energy. Yeah, this is quite fascinating because there is the Lord who is lying in the Garbhodaka ocean from whose navel sprouts a stem, and on that lotus, Lord Brahma is sitting. Then there is the Lord who is the super soul of everyone. So he wants to know about that as well. And the super soul is in the heart of very low creatures. The super soul is in the heart of very low creatures as well. Low creatures, even human beings, are in the sense that people whose consciousness is so low, they have the super soul in them. It is just that they can't hear and receive instructions. Their covering of consciousness is so dense that they don't perceive the presence of Krishna in the heart. They cannot hear instructions. Devotees, on the other hand, as they increase their sambandha, they get guided by Krishna. Krishna maintains them. This is what he explains in 9.22. I'm going to maintain you. I'm going to preserve all you have. How does Krishna preserve everything? How does Krishna maintain us? He, as a super soul who is within us, is instructing us. Because ultimately, it's a manifestation of certain reality in life, but it is also a matter of taking good decisions to reach that reality. Both of these are being facilitated by Krishna. O learned Brahmana, it was formally explained that all the planets of the universe, with their respective governors, are situated in different parts of the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. I've also heard that different planetary systems are supposed to be in the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. But what is their actual position? Will you please explain that? So Parīkṣit Maharaj has received a lot of knowledge in the past 7 chapters. Now he is asking a lot of questions about the knowledge that he already received. And the answers are going to be given subsequently. Yeah, we will read about the answers in the next session in the 9th chapter. Also, please explain the duration of time between creation and annihilation, and that of other subsidiary creations, as well as the nature of time indicated by the sound of past, present, and future. Also, please explain the duration and measurement of life of the different living beings, known as the demigods, the human beings, etc., in different planets of the universe. A lot of questions. O purest of the Brahmanas, please also explain the cause of the different durations of time, both short and long, as well as the beginning of time following the course of action. Then again, kindly describe how the proportionate accumulation of the reactions resulting from different modes of material nature act upon the desiring living being, promoting or degrading him among the different species of life, beginning from the demigods down to the most insignificant creatures. O best of the Brahmanas, please also describe how the creation of the globes throughout the universe, the four directions of the heavens, the sky, the planets, the stars, the mountains, the rivers, the seas, and the islands, as well as the different kinds of inhabitants take place. This is practically the Bhagavatam. Yeah? His questions in this chapter are what is basically going to create the future of the different answers that are going to be given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Also, please describe the inner and outer space of the universe by specific divisions, as well as the character and activities of the great souls, and also the characteristics of different classifications of castes and orders of social life. He's also asking about Varnashram. See, this is Achit. Varnashram is not a spiritual objective in the sense that Krishna consciousness is beyond Varna and beyond Ashram. Varnashram is a facilitation of the material universe, or material, I would say, phenomenon for the journey of the soul, so that the journey of the soul is able to move forward progressively towards Krishna consciousness. So what Parīkṣit Maharaj is talking about here in this chapter has a mixture of both Chit and Achit, both things that are a part of the material phenomenon and also of the spiritual phenomenon. Please explain all the different ages in the duration of creation, also the duration of such ages. Also tell me about the different activities of the different incarnations of the Lord in different ages. This is the Bhagavatam basically being described. All of this is going to be learned throughout the remaining cantos. Parīkṣit Maharaj is basically laying out the foundation so that Srila Sukadeva Goswami could address these questions, and by addressing these questions could basically expand on everything. Yeah. So the remaining part of the Bhagavatam is going to touch upon it. Please also explain what may generally be the common religious affiliations of human society, as well as specific occupational duties in religion, the classification of social orders, as well as the administrative royal orders, and religious principles for one who may be in distress. So, what is the common religious affiliation? Common religious affiliation is devotional service. There really isn't anything more common than devotional service for all souls, because every other religious affiliation is basically external. So there are differences externally, and what is the internal objective is sambandha, devotional service. We spoke about it earlier when we were giving a talk before we started reading the verses. The facilitation of devotional service is the common religious affiliation. What is changing is the representation of religion in different classes, different beings. But they are slowly, steadily trying to bring the soul closer to understanding sambandha. Kindly explain all about the elementary principles of creation, the number of such elementary principles, their causes, their development, also the process of devotional service, and the method of mystic powers. What are the opulences of the great mystics? What is their ultimate realization? How does the perfect mystic become detached from the subtle astral body? What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures, including the branches of history and the supplementary Puranas? Fascinating. So he's practically requesting Sukadeva Goswami to very efficiently encapsulate the whole aspect of material creation into the few cantos that we're going to read. It's really fascinating about how deep he has gone practically in asking him questions. Here he's asking about a mystic and the separation and detachment from the subtle astral body. See, there is a subtle body. We know it as composed of the soul, which resides in the subtle body, which is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. The astral body is the same as the subtle body, except that when we say subtle body, we are giving a general description. But there are other disciplines within Vedic sciences where they break down the subtle body into the nervous system, because the subtle body has its own nerves. Yeah, nadis. You heard of the nadi? There is the Pingala nadi, the Ida nadi, the Sushumna. You heard of all of those, the chakras, the Muladhara, Swadhisthana. These are all the nervous system of the subtle astral body. So there are disciplines that break it down because that is how they purify their existence. But in devotional service for us, because we are dependent on purification by coming in touch with Krishna, who is completely pure in different ways, for us, we don't really need to know the intricacies of how the subtle body operates. The mystics need to know. because different mantras have different effects on the nadis. Yeah, different mantras, the different names, they all have different effects on the nadis. They all produce their own outcomes. As a consequence, the mystics who practice mystic yoga, they're very familiar with the action of using a certain mantra to suppress something in the subtle body, using a mantra to increase something else in the subtle body. These are all a part of the mystic process. But we don't generally bother ourselves because we want to focus on service, which is so much more simpler and easier to do, which is to engage and come in touch with Krishna by serving him in so many different ways. And that purifies us. For them, they are dependent on what they can do. For us, we are dependent on mercy. So we are dependent on what we can do to gain mercy from. So there's a distinction between the two. Now, the subtle body is also given up in the path of purification. The subtle body is also given up. The false ego disappears. The mind that is created in the mode of goodness, it disappears. And so do the aspects of intelligence, etc. All of these are being dovetailed and purified. So the point is, there is separation from the physical body during death. There is also separation from subtle body after that fact, which is really what is called moksha. Moksha is separation from the subtle body. That is moksha. There is liberation from the material body because the body gets destroyed. And then there is liberation from the subtle body, which is the actual idea of being liberated from this world. The subtle body's liberation occurs when the quality of the subtle body is the same as the universe where it wants to go. If the quality of the subtle body, consciousness-wise, is of Satyaloka, it will go to Satyaloka. If the quality of the subtle body is of the Maharloka, it will go to Maharloka, it will go to Janaloka, Tapaloka, all the different lokas. If the quality of the subtle body and the ego is completely pure, where it is completely surrendered and understands that it belongs to Krishna and it is identified very closely with its identity in the spiritual sky, it will go to the spiritual sky. Basically, the subtle body basically is destroyed. It is also purified and it has no say. So as a devotee advances in Krishna consciousness, then everything collapses. The mind basically has no say in their existence. They don't operate on the principle of the mind. Yeah, this is what happened to me. My mind is emotional. My mind has overcome me. I am beset with confusion. There is the mode of ignorance. I'm always thinking of the past, or I'm always thinking about the future, and I'm anxious or I'm depressed. Yeah, this is the phenomenon of the mind in touch with the modes of nature. The devotee who advances, they are not influenced by the mind. The mind is purified. What is the meaning of purification? The mind has come to the point of the mode of goodness, pure goodness, predominated by goodness. At that point, the mind has the ability to completely remove itself from false notions of false ego. It can remove itself. The mind was created in the mode of goodness. If you want to resolve issues of the mind, go to the mode of goodness. If you have problems with depression, you have problems with anxiety, strategize and move forward to reach the mode of goodness. This is what we're supposed to do. Because in the mode of goodness, the mind was created. If you want to fix something, you have to go back there where it was started. Yeah? Go back to where it started and you'll be able to fix it. This is exactly what is required. Yeah? So the point which I'm trying to make is, sometimes we hear that we have to know this and we have to know that, we have to know the intricate process of how the mind works, how the mind interacts, how the mind, does different things in this world. All of that is going to give us some extra information for us to be able to make advancement. The answer is no, it's not required. What we need is to understand how to engage in service so that we can come in touch closer and closer with Krishna. When you come in touch with Krishna Sambandha is adequate to destroy the false ego, liberate the mind. That is when the subtle body liberates itself and the soul becomes free. So as one advances, anartha nivritti is complete. They become fixed and the beginning of bhava starts. The mind has no say in their existence. The mind cannot interfere. The mind cannot say that, get distracted while you're chanting. Yeah? Think about this, think about that, do this, do that. This is all the mind. As one makes advancement, the mind has no say at all. Because the mind is purified and the mind is slowly, steadily submitting itself. to the soul. The mind has no say. So for us, the whole prospect of being relieved of the subtle body, of the mind, intelligence, false ego, happens quite easily by just coming in touch with Krishna in different ways. This is all we need to do. We do not need to understand the intricacies of how the mind works, because the intricacies and the complications of the mind are a matter of passion and ignorance. If we simply strategize to come to the mode of goodness, issues of the mind can be resolved. This is the reason why there's so much emphasis in our movement for coming to the mode of goodness. This is the whole purpose of sadhana bhakti. The idea is to develop deeper and deeper sambandha and slowly, steadily progress in consciousness from being in touch with the lower modes. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. When we use the word abhadreshu, Bhadra is auspicious, abhadreshu, that which is inauspicious. What is inauspicious? Passion, ignorance. That is highly inauspicious. As one progresses from passion, ignorance, and they come to the mode of goodness, they have the ability to be able to deal with everything that comes to them. They are not bothered. Why are they not bothered? Because the mind has no say. There is no passion to make them think about the future. Constant anxiety about the future. What should I do? What should I do? Yeah. Constant anxiety about the past, because they're not able to shake off bad experiences. They're not able to shake off the past. As a consequence, constant meditation on the past. The mind has no say if it comes to the mode of goodness. It was created in the mode of goodness. It will slowly dissolve at the mode of goodness. Yeah. This is why we hear for an advanced devotee who reaches from Nishtha to Bhava, the senses, the spiritual senses, the body, the subtle body, they can basically find very highly animated, amplified aspects of existence. If they want to hear Nam, all the power of all the other senses will come to the ears. If they want to see Krishna, then the seeing process will become very empowered. So it is basically completely under their control. There is no influence of the astral subtle body for someone who is becoming purified, who is slowly getting to beyond anartha nivritti. So the point I'm trying to make is that for us, it's a very, very straightforward process. For the mystics, it's a very difficult process. One needs to be quite an expert. Yeah? A lot of things depend on how much of an expert they are. Please explain unto me how the living beings are generated, how they are maintained, and how they are annihilated. Tell me also the advantages and disadvantages of discharging devotional service unto the Lord. What are the Vedic rituals and injunctions of the supplementary Vedic rites? What are the procedures of religion, dharma, economic development, artha, sense gratification, kama? Please also explain how, merged in the body of the Lord, living beings are created and how the infidels appear in the world. Also, please explain how the unconditioned living entities exist. So there is Nitya Baddha. Baddha means to be bound by material nature. Of these completely bound living entities, some are favorable of wanting to progress and accepting the Lord. Some are highly unfavorable. Those are the infidels. Yeah, the word infidel. Yeah, the infidel word, the infidel here is basically Pashandi. Pashandi is one who is against the path which has been given by Krishna. Yeah, so there are conditioned beings. These are conditioned beings. So there are conditioned beings who are favorable. There are conditioned beings who are unfavorable. Here he is asking, how about those who have not been conditioned as well? So he wants to know about all three categories. The independent personality of Godhead enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency, and at the time of annihilation, gives them up to the external potency, and he remains a witness it all. He remains a witness to it all. So enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency, at the time of annihilation, gives them up to the external potency. So basically, annihilation is this whole universe gets destroyed at the time of annihilation, but he does not come in touch with the external energy. He does not come in touch with the external energy. The jivas who come in touch with Krishna, when Krishna is on the planet, they return back with him. Yeah? They return back with him. It is said that one progresses in devotional service, then one gets an opportunity to be born in the womb of a gopi. And then they interact with Krishna. There are those who are born in the womb of a gopi, who are a part of the material universe, who interact with Krishna, who return with him, there are those in those circumstances who reject him as well. Yeah? Not necessarily born in the womb of a gopi, but they reject Krishna. So you find that in the Mahabharata. When we watch the Mahabharata, for instance, or read about Mahabharata, there were those who accepted Krishna, there were those who rejected Krishna. So even though they had the opportunity to go back, if they had accepted him, they would have gone back. But they did not accept him, they chose to remain. Yeah? So Krishna leaves them to the external potency. He does not come in touch with the external potency. He always interacts with everyone through the internal potency, which is Yogamaya. So all the activities of the Lord on the pastime of killing all the demons, it's all done by internal potency. That's why if you were to come in touch with great violence, such as killing, annihilation, destruction, murder, decapitation, it will disturb you. It will disturb you to no end. It's very gross, and it leaves very deep, I would say, impressions on the chitta. It's like splashing a very white piece of cloth with some very dark substance. So as a consequence, the more you scrub and scrub and scrub, some remnants of that splashing would remain. That's the reason why gross aspects of experiences, such as very gross sexuality, which is normally seen, now it's all over the internet, the impression that it can leave is extraordinarily harmful because it's very difficult to remove that impression. Similarly, there's gross aspects of violence. There's gross violence that is experienced, especially nowadays. The whole idea of entertainment is to make people see the suffering of others. Yeah, this is the idea of entertainment. Entertainment in the present time is to show people that this is how other people suffer. They get killed this way, they lose something, they have mental issues. This is basically the idea of how people entertain themselves. All of these fall in the gross category. They all have the ability to leave deep impressions on the chitta, the consciousness of the watcher, or whoever comes in touch. And as a consequence, it's very difficult to scrub it off. The more they take that association, deeper the impressions become, and then they start acting on those impressions because now they have become basically a part of what they saw. Yeah, great damage has been done by this Hollywood, Bollywood types. Great damage, irreversible great damage, unimaginable damage. Yeah. In the name of entertainment, they promote such nations. It's very difficult because in that encapsulated 2-hour, 3-hour window of watching a movie, a person gets so absorbed into whatever is going on that the consciousness becomes a part of it. And then it becomes very difficult for them to remove all of this nonsense from their chitta. Very difficult. And then it interferes. You never know when it comes up, and you never know where it is going to basically hurt them. In what manner is it going to hurt them? You never know. So this is basically how deep impressions are caused. Yeah. So basically what I was just wanting to say is that impressions which are of a very gross nature stay for a very, very long time, and they disturb us. Yeah, they can cause nightmares and bad dreams. But we are asked to read the Krishna book, where Krishna kills one demon after another in the Krishna book. That's violence too, quite naturally. That's violence. Yeah, he kills the Bakasura demon by splitting his mouth. Yeah, he kills Putana by suckling on her breast, but then he practically sucks the life out of her by being in a baby form. Yeah, he then kills the different demons by different ways. But when you read it, there are such positive impressions that are created in the chitta that the fear caused by material phenomena just disappears. This is because Krishna's activities are completely pure and spiritual, and they are managed by the internal potency. The movies that are being shown today of violence are a manifestation of the destructive potency of material nature. As a consequence, they can only cause more of ignorance. But Krishna's violence is also extraordinarily liberating. How many of us feel disturbed by seeing Lord Narasimhadev wearing intestines on his neck? Yeah, very gory sight, by the way. Very, very gory sight. To be honest, Very, very violent sight to see the, what do you call it? The bifurcation of Hiranyakashipu, the removal of intestines, and he is wearing it as a garland. How many of us feel disturbed with that sight? We, in fact, feel extraordinarily protected, and we also feel, we, in fact, actually feel quite enlivened by the appearance of the Lord in that particular form of Lord Nrsimhadev. He's very protective. It doesn't disturb us. It doesn't give us nightmares. See, this is the difference, because the Leela, which is represented there, is internal potency. When we see regular mundane violence, it is external potency. It leaves bad impressions and it causes issues. It can even cause serious mental issues if people keep coming in touch with nations. So that's the difference. Krishna's interactions with the demon, his killing, all of this is purely, purely transcendental and is done by the internal potency. So that's the difference of how, even if you come in touch with great violence in Krishna's, associated with Krishna, we also feel quite liberated by coming in touch with that. Yeah? There's no fear. There's no fear whatsoever. There's no fear. O great sage, representative of the Lord, kindly satisfy my inquisitiveness in all that I have inquired from you and all that I may not have inquired from you from the very beginning of my questionings. Since I am a soul surrendered unto you, please impart full knowledge in this connection. So this is where he says, I'm surrendered unto you. Yeah, I'm surrendered unto you. As a consequence, the greater the level of surrender, Srila Sukadeva Goswami will have greater ability to impart the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the quality of the speaker and quality of the listeners as well. O great sage, you are as good as Brahma, the original living being. Others follow custom only, as followed by the previous philosophical speculators. The original living being Brahma is being brought up here because Lord Brahma heard from the Lord directly, and because it was unadulterated, it is wonderful to hear from Srila Sukadeva Goswami, because he heard from his father Srila Vyasadeva, who heard from Srila Narad Muni. Narad Muni heard from Lord Brahma in disciplic succession. O learned Brahmana, because of my drinking the nectar of the message of the infallible personality of Godhead, which is flowing down the ocean of your speeches, I do not feel any sort of exhaustion due to my fasting. Yeah, he's saying he's actually fasting because he doesn't want the senses to disturb him. Yeah, you can't accomplish much with a full stomach. You can actually accomplish nothing with a full stomach. Eating is required, but if you eat beyond a certain level, then work will cease because the body puts all the energy in just kind of dissolving and digesting what's been eaten. So I've seen my spiritual master, my Guru Maharaj. He used to eat once a day, and that was very efficient for him because after accomplishing what he had to accomplish, he used to eat once a day. That was it. If he ever felt hungry, he used to probably have some popcorn or something like that. They used to keep everything ready. They used to keep everything ready so that in the night when he is, writing his books, etc., he could have some snack if he feels hungry. But if you eat more, then you can't listen. It is not a good thing to listen after eating because it doesn't help. The senses are somewhat more overwhelming at that point in time. Now he's saying he's been fasting, but he doesn't feel any exhaustion at all due to the fasting. He has no exhaustion because he's in touch with transcendence. He's drinking the nectar. He's drinking nectar, and nectar is associated with Amrit, right? Which is basically immortal life. As a consequence, it is rejuvenating him. It is not causing any tiredness. Shuta Goswami said, thus Sukadeva Goswami, being invited by Maharaj Parīkṣit to speak on topics of Lord Shri Krishna with the devotees, was very much pleased. He began to reply to the inquiries of Maharaj Parīkṣit by saying that the science of personality of Godhead was spoken first by Lord himself to Brahma when he was first born. Srimad Bhagavatam is the supplementary Vedic literature, and it is just in pursuance of the Vedas. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Parīkṣit had inquired from him. Maharaj Parīkṣit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Best from the dynasty of the Pandus, such a big statement. They're not talking about Arjuna, they're not talking about Bhima, they're not talking about Yudhishthira. Here they're saying he was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus because he practically became an instrument to bring Srimad Bhagavatam out of Srila Sukadeva Goswami and present it to the world. So that was his glory. He practically facilitated the liberation of the entire Kali Yuga, because the liberation of Kali Yuga is dependent on Shrunvatam, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is practically going to extinguish all that is problematic in the heart. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevaya. So he practically facilitated that. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to take a few questions, and then the subsequent week we will go into chapter 9. Chapter 9 is a very, very important chapter, and then from there on we will move on to further into Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, I can take some questions if you have any. Did I intimidate or frighten you by saying you should be careful about asking questions? I hope not. None of you are of the category where I have to tell you that. I was merely explaining that one needs to be, what I would say, submissive while asking questions. And I was just wanting to give a category of how we should present ourselves in Srimad Bhagavatam classes. Not necessarily, I was not really saying anything about anybody here. So I hope that is clear. Okay, so I think we'll end here because I don't see any question coming through.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol?
Yeah, I have one question, Prabhu.
Yes, go ahead, Ravindra Prabhu.
Prabhu, it's related to the questions and having clarity. See, compared to any other systems, here in ISKCON, everything is like just not like giving lectures. Later, there will be question and answers and clarification. There is a lot of scope for nothing is like just a belief. You need to understand like that.
Right.
But yeah, my experience with this ISKCON from the beginning when I joined, means when I come in touch with people, and then over the time, the more I am coming to know, there are so many things which appears like wonderful, amazing, beautiful in the beginning. Slowly, it's like so many things I am seeing which are not correct. Suppose I can give example, like when I first attended the temple program in ISKCON Bangalore, I felt like it is wonderful, and immediately I started practicing it. And later I came to know that they are different. They are deviated from main ISKCON and they are running their own thing, like Ritvik philosophy, all that. And yeah, like that, yeah. And then slowly coming, I was not convinced with their philosophy. I saw their videos and they are telling this reason, that reason, so this is the proper way, all that. But I wonder how come people get convinced. Are they really convinced with that, or they just want to somehow win over the property and catch hold of it? So somehow they create some philosophy and they continue with that. Like that, I have doubts whether even people after practicing spirituality, still certain ideas which are very clear to me or to certain group of people, this is completely wrong. For certain people, how they feel like it's completely correct and this is the way it should be, especially coming to this Ritvikism.
Right.
How to understand this too?
Sure, good question. See, basically the challenge that we face is that when something resembles what is correct to a great extent, you see, for example, if a dollar bill is counterfeited with great accuracy it can cause even greater damage than something which is less accurate. So in a similar fashion, when we have philosophies, or rather we have practices that are offered which look extraordinarily close to what it is supposed to be, and it is very difficult to find out what is basically wrong there unless you know the philosophy deeply enough, then they have the ability to, first of all, attract certain kind of souls, because the journey of the soul itself is of a certain nature, so they may be attracted to it, and they need to go through certain challenges and experiences. That is one. Second is, there is also a possibility that basically they are fitting in to the consciousness which is also prevailing in certain ways. Yeah, they're fitting into the consciousness. So for example, an organization could fit into the consciousness that is prevailing, and as a consequence attract a lot of people to it. So why does it exist? In fact, we don't want to shut anything down. Yeah, we don't want to shut anything down. The reason I'm saying this is because whatever is authentic will continue further and further. You don't need to shut it down at all. In other words, you don't need to protect it by shutting everything down. You don't need to. Whatever is authentic will just continue further and further quite naturally, and it has its own weeding process. So you have people who are sincere who will continue, and then those who are somewhat affected by material energy and they develop different ideas, then they develop their own, philosophical deviation, and then they represent things in a different way altogether. The point I'm trying to make is that why does it exist? It does exist because there are those who have to go through an experience of feeling let down. Yeah, sometimes we come in touch with gurus who let us down. Yeah, not necessarily in ISKCON, but throughout history, there have been gurus who have let disciples down. There have been disciples who have left the guru down. There have been institutions that are formed which are quite deviant. Then there are big followings which go to that place. It's because in the hearts of those who are going there, they also have something going on within them. They also have some kind of karma which doesn't allow them to accept and reject in a careful way. But there is always danger. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he appeared in the planet, his task that was given to him was extraordinarily, I would say, it was momentous in terms of, he was basically the task that was given to him. Within a matter of 300 years after the passing or disappearance of Mahaprabhu, Gaudiya Vaishnavism had become splintered, and there were so many different Apasampradayas, meaning they represented the original Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, but they were quite deviant. They all came into being. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur basically had to speak against all of them to bring out what is the original Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy propounded by Mahaprabhu and re-establish it. It was all re-established during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time. So there were the Sahajiyas. The Sahajiyas, in one sense, they pretend that they're already advanced. They pretend that they're already advanced, and to such an extent that they start acting like a gopi, they start acting like one of Radharani's servants, etc. And then they start changing their external behavior to such an extent. And then ultimately, it is all a matter of, material sex life. That is what it results in. But externally, you will find that they are worshipping Radha Krishna deities. The Mayavadis worship Radha Krishna deities. So it's very difficult to know what temple is associated with what if you just walk into a temple. You also have, for example, different groups and sampradayas which are misrepresenting Mahaprabhu's teaching. So it is not a new phenomenon. That is the point I'm trying to convey to you. It is not a new phenomenon. Why does Krishna allow all of this? For two reasons. One, sometimes these things manifest because there is something going on which needs to be corrected, and as a consequence, disease comes up. For example, the body internally has some issues. Yeah? If you don't fix it, then it comes up as disease. Then you get to see what the disease is, you start fixing it. So our own movement, for example, needs to see some kind of resistance from outside for us to know that we ourselves are having problems so that we could deal with it effectively. So in one sense, these are all devotees who are in the Ritvik temple. Madhu Pandit, who runs the Ritvik temple in Bangalore, Madhu Pandit Prabhu. I have seen him and I've had interactions with him. when he was a brahmachari wearing saffron, he used to be a servant of Jayapataka Maharaj. Yeah, I have had interactions when he was a servant of Jayapataka Maharaj. This is back in the early 80s. Sorry, late 80s. So he used to visit, and he used to basically, I have had interactions with him. Those days, the crowds were small. We used to speak one-on-one, and we used to spend time together. He was a brahmachari then. I've seen him then. So is the case with some of the main leaders there. I've known them, when they were very dedicated to the spiritual master. But then what happens is they develop their own misconceptions because of certain challenges that they see within the institution. And then those misconceptions manifest themselves as, a variant philosophy. Now, the point is, slowly, steadily, that will also change over a period of time, just as various philosophies came and they went away because they were not authentic. This would also fall in the same category, and it will come back again. But sometimes these diseases come to just give us a warning that something is wrong and something needs to get fixed. So people start looking at what does it happen? Why did this happen? Why was there this whole philosophy of Ritvikism which has come about? Where did all these guys come from? You see, and you will find that they were all within our ISKCON. They were all dedicated in one sense. I've seen them when they were very dedicated. They used to distribute books, and they used to do all of these things very sincerely. So the point I'm trying to make is, why did they happen? What did it happen? These are all questions that are to be raised by the management of ISKCON, which they have done quite effectively. They have done this. There have been several meetings, and they've understood where the issues are. They're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. They understand that diseases come, and diseases come because there are certain, I would say, aspects of our existence that are ignored. As a consequence, they turn into disease. They need to be removed. They need to be kind of, I would say, surgically removed in certain ways and taken care of. So there is a lot of dialogue, and there is a lot of understanding, much deeper understanding. So there is no hatred as such, you see, over the years, because this is an old phenomenon. There's no hatred over the years, But the point I'm trying to make is that these are manifestations sometimes to correct the institution. Sometimes it tells the leaders that certain philosophies have to be guarded and certain philosophies have to be spoken of very carefully. Srila Prabhupada's books are very carefully thought out so that people just don't run away with ideas and start doing things which they're not supposed to. So he constantly harps on what is the fundamental aspects of Krishna consciousness. If you hear Srila Radhanath Swami's Maharaj's lectures, every lecture he will talk about humility. Every lecture, he will simply use the word humility. Every lecture, there would be at least some portion of it dedicated to the idea of humility, because eventually, as people listen to it, they would develop a deeper idea. So the point I'm trying to say is, we are young. ISKCON is quite young, even though it's old from the perspective of 1966, 1965 to 2020. It's quite young for an organization. And in these young years, there were definitely challenges that were seen, and there were changes that were made. More challenges are possible. There will be more changes. This is how a species evolves. They constantly have to fix things which they see, and sometimes things display themselves as disease. Yeah, they don't just show us symptoms. They display themselves as disease, and then you have to act more carefully. So there is no such thing as in the material world where you wouldn't find duality and misrepresentation, because it's always going to be there. Yeah. So that's the point I want to make. Why is it there? Because it is a manifestation of certain ideas and ideals and certain changes that were needed. It came about. Those changes were made in ISKCON. Yeah, after the fact of the Ritvik movement, there were a lot of changes made about how the initiation process should be, how the selection of gurus. So many changes were made after the Ritvik movement. The point that you're trying to make is there was a lot of talk and a lot of introspection on what went wrong. And this brings about some positivity. And I'm sure it's just going to get better, not worse. That's my thought. Now, the point which I want to make about the fact as to challenges within ISKCON is that every institution has challenges, and every institution has certain positivities. Now, what we need to do is, when we come into the organization, we would want to approach the organization from the perspective of service. If you do so, then you're protected from getting involved in any kind of controversy, because you're going to do your service and you're going to grow, and then you're going to basically contribute even more. So that is the way it should be approached. Will there be problems in the future? The answer is yes, because it's the material world. Yeah, there will be problems. The material world is synonymous. Yeah, every step in the material world is filled with danger. So there really isn't a situation where you can escape from problems. There will always be challenges, but the question is, if you're authentic, will you survive? Absolutely. Whatever is authentic will survive, and it will move forward. I hope I touched upon this. I didn't answer your question directly, but I wanted to give you some history, because the Ritviks are not monsters. They were also very dedicated disciples. I have seen them, so I'm talking out of personal experience. Yeah, I've seen them, I've met them, when they were very much a part of what we see today. So we don't want to think that they are monsters. It is just that they are basically following a philosophy which we find is erroneous because it has no basis. At the same time, they are promoting Krishna consciousness in certain ways. Yeah, they're dedicated in certain ways. And they're distributing books. They're taking everything together. So we want to appreciate that. We don't want to reject them fully. It is like a cousin or a brother who suddenly gets angry and he walks away. So do you reject him? You don't. You basically wait for him to come back. You try to understand why he went away in the first place, to see what was wrong in your house. Then you fix your house, and then you wait for the brother to come back. That's what you need to do. So that is how we need to operate within the Gaudiya Sampradayas. They're all the same. Yeah. The duality that we should subject ourselves to should be of material nature, not between the Gaudiya Sampradayas. These are all branches of Mahaprabhu's tree. So if you want a view of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, you should take Mahaprabhu's view. Mahaprabhu's view is the view of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Everybody is a part of it. This tree of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, Gauranga's tree, has many branches. So we are also one branch. It doesn't mean that the other branches are useless. Does not mean that the other branches are against us. There will always be some differences in how people approach it, but it doesn't mean that they're against us. So the more and more as we grow spiritually, the greater would be our principle of inclusion. The more and more we are material, greater would be the principle of exclusion. So we want to be more inclusive. We want to appreciate Krishna. We want to appreciate Mahaprabhu. At the same time, we don't want to be blindfolded. We want to understand material nature. Yeah. So are there challenges? Absolutely. Which institution does not have challenges? Every institution has challenges. Are we evolving from these challenges? Yes. Sometimes do these challenges present themselves as serious disease? Yes. So there's a lot of pain when there's a serious disease. And then one fixes themselves and keep moving on. So I hope this makes sense to you, Ravindra Prabhu. You should never, one thing I want to just say before I end this conversation, nothing that happens in Krishna consciousness should ever be looked at in black and white. There's always the Krishna factor. Krishna is involved. If the Ritviks came about, the Krishna was involved there. So why did the Ritviks come about? So we want to always look at things with the Krishna factor included. Yeah, I hope this makes sense. We can talk further at a certain time later.
Yeah, yes, bro. Yeah, thank you, bro. I see like this is the major deviation we see, but within ISKCON we come again. There won't be same opinion between different Maharajas coming to certain issues like female Diksha gurus. All these things I get confused. Like
see, there's nothing wrong. See, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in having a different opinion and a different approach. Yeah, there's nothing wrong. There are some of us. Sorry, go ahead. Finish, please finish.
Yeah. Yes, bro. So I feel like is it because I'm not purified? I'm getting disturbed with when I read news or about certain events happening, or is it nothing to do with me? I should just leave it as it's always there. It's nothing new. It's a time immemorial. So many differences will be there. So we should not think about it. Or I should have some opinion. Like that, to myself, I get so many questions into these things when I hear different opinions from different Maharajas.
Yeah, see, basically, on the same issue, see, basically, they're all trying to find the truth. And what you must do is always have an understanding that we don't want to get affected by thinking there's something very wrong with the institution just because there are different opinions about different things. They're all trying to find the truth. They're all Prabhupada's children, grandchildren. They're all trying to head towards the same goal. They're all trying to find the truth, represent the truth. there are differences in terms of what they represent or how they want to approach it. Some of them are conservative, some of them are liberal in terms of their approach to overall to the world. So you find a lot of flavors coming in. So what I'm saying is that we want to basically understand things from the perspective of the fact that there's so much good which is happening, and there's also confusion. So we don't want to gravitate and focus just on the confusion. We want to focus on whatever good is happening as well. Then we'll have the ability to kind of have a very balanced view. So that's what I would recommend we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me take a few questions. There are a few chats here. This is regarding the 5 samskaras given to an eligible sadhaka that you discussed at the beginning of the session. My question, how important is Gayatri Mantra Diksha compared to Harinam? I personally think that by the first initiation, Harinam itself, we are actually connected to the parampara. Please forgive me if this question of my sheer ignorance. Actually, no. Harinam is sufficient. For us to go back to Godhead, all we need is Harinam. The Gayatri Mantra, there are 7 different Gayatris that are given. These Gayatris basically are given for those who want to get into Brahmanical service and enter into deity worship. And the deity worship part requires that we develop certain qualities and certain aspects that are required. So as a consequence, the Gayatri mantras are being given. Yeah? Because every other mantra that you chant for the deity is an extension of what you've already learned. So certain capabilities come for the devotees who want to become brahmanas and who want to serve the deities. But if your question is, am I not going back to Godhead because I haven't received second initiation? The answer is no. If you receive first initiation, that is more than enough. That initiation is sufficient to take us back to Godhead. So there really isn't anything wrong in your question, to clarify. Yes, the question again is what to do if there's strong desire for Vapu Seva. Vapu Seva can be done in terms of being able to serve Srila Prabhupada's mission. The mission of Srila Prabhupada overall in terms of preaching and so on is what we do when we come in touch with the Guru. What would a Guru want? A Guru would want his Guru to be served. And when we want to examine how his Guru should be served, then we would want to examine how exactly, what is it that he had in his mind. If you were to ask these very sincere disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they would say that you should further the mission of Srila Prabhupada, which is to further the mission of Lord Chaitanya. This would automatically constitute service. It does not mean Vapu Seva means serving the body. It means getting association and then instructions and then serving based on association and instructions. That is what it means. So one would make progress as it is. As per the mystic yogi system, as you are explaining, if at all we need to get involved in any way with the mystic practices, how should we reconcile their practices with Krishna consciousness? I'm not sure if you can answer me here. I can write to you. Okay. Maybe this requires a little clarification as to what mystic practice is being referred to here. Yeah? Perhaps you could write me and then I could clarify. Or if you have the ability to share here, please do. It's up to you. Okay. Any other question or comment? Okay, so the answer is I wouldn't really constitute this as the same as what was discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Mysticism, which is being discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, has to do with being able to purify oneself and being able to elevate their consciousness by going higher through the practice of mystic yoga. So it requires purification of the nadis, purification of the chakras. This is discussed in the 2nd chapter of this particular canto as well. So this is not basically, what is being talked of here is pranic healing and Reiki. I wouldn't really call them as equivalent of what was being discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam as mystic practices. I wouldn't. I don't really think they have any consequence. Consequence as in making it difficult in devotional service or not. I don't believe so. Any other thought, question, comment? Okay, so I will end the session here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Haribol.
Haribol. This regard to the lectures of late I was hearing, Bhakti Charu Maharaj's lectures is always emphasizing very much cooperation. And not this morning, I think last week, I was hearing one disciple of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he was glorifying Maharaj, is saying, he emphasized very much, I know there are a lot of guru groups going on, and that is not. Even today, every lecture, whatever I heard about Bhakti Charu Maharaj, I was hearing he's really emphasizing on cooperation and Srila Prabhupada, which really touched my heart to the bottom, I could say. It's really important. And what do you want to say about that, Prabhu? Because I don't know, sometimes you feel there are different things happening, but I may not be right. I may see something wrong. But when Maharaj was all the time it's saying, I thought, oh, this must be something very serious. That's why Maharaj is really saying, whichever lecture I heard that. So do you want to say about that? Because how much emphasis we are putting on that as the whole as conjugacy or anything?
Yeah, well, basically, I think the emphasis, yes, groupism and wanting to be a part of one group is a natural human trait. And you also find that happening within ISKCON, because we are sometimes told that who we are connected to as a guru and who we are connected to as a God family, they are our main shelter in certain ways. And as a consequence, we tend to perhaps we tend to somehow focus more on the idea of just being within one group rather than taking the essence that we want to basically appreciate and take shelter of the guru and his disciples. Yeah, we want to basically think that that is not the mood carried by Srila Prabhupada's disciples.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember back in the early 2000 time frame, Gunagrahi Maharaj was GBC of South America, and my Guru Maharaj was basically, he had a lot of disciples in South America. So he gave them Harinam Diksha, and he told them to take second initiation from Gunagrahi Maharaj so that they could serve him nicely. Yeah? So they don't really differentiate. Most of the gurus, they don't really kind of want to form groups. They in fact are opposite of what is basically seen. Yeah? They don't have that mood. They're all looking at each other and they're looking at themselves as Srila Prabhupada's servants. Yeah? So that is what is seen. So the point is, yes, there is groupism because it's a natural human trait to identify with someone and identify with a certain group. And sometimes it becomes a bit fanatical where we exclude everybody else and then think that this is the answer to our future. But it is a trait. So what I'm trying to say is it is not efficient. It is not what is emphasized by Srila Prabhupada. and it is not done by many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. Our own spiritual masters cooperated, and they were very loyal to each other, even though they had differences. They had a lot of differences, but they were very loyal to each other and to Srila Prabhupada. So the point I'm trying to make is it is not efficient, but it exists. Yeah? It is not efficient, but it exists. So cooperation, which is spoken of by His Holiness Bhakti Maharaj, is all about us being able to put Srila Prabhupada first.
Yes.
Climbing over our differences, looking at the bigger mission, and then being able to put Srila Prabhupada first. So that is the cooperation that he emphasized in every class, literally, and it was his personality as well. He was basically representing himself as representing Srila Prabhupada fully, where he expected cooperation at such a level that we are literally seeing and wanting everybody to succeed, to facilitate others. This is proper devotional service where we want everybody to succeed. Yeah, we do not want to compete. There is competition in the spiritual sky, but the competition in the spiritual sky is done with intense love amongst the participants. The competition in the material world is basically quite ruthless, where it's very competitive. It's okay. I can basically, we should succeed, but someone else shouldn't, or we are superior to others, all of these things. So these are traits that are brought forth from the material world. Over a period of time, as devotees advance in their sadhana, they generally give up these traits. It doesn't mean one should give up being loyal to their God family or loyal to the Guru. That's not the intention at all. That is always going to be there. There will always be a lot of affinity towards the God family that you come from. And because they carry the nature of the Guru, a lot of affinity towards, what we would call as the Guru's mood as well. Yeah, so there's a lot of affinity. So that is always encouraged, but at the same time, it should not become groupism. But normally what happens is that is also seen, but it will be overcome by devotees over a period of time. They would slowly, steadily integrate and become a part of the larger body of ISKCON. Yeah, so what we should do is we should continue setting an example, but ourselves not being a part of a group. That is what we should do. We should extend ourselves across the board to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, Sutta Prabhu was on the other day. He was saying, if you really want to respect your Guru, you follow your Guru. Whatever he is doing, if you follow, so because Srila Prabhupada disciples are all united with all these differences, because every human is different. So follow them, so everything will be fine then. if you really want to respect someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the sense that, yes, following them, and we want to, basically wanting to understand how they cooperated. I gave you an example.
Yeah.
Normally, who would say that you take Harinam from me and take second initiation from someone else?
Yeah.
It's a rare example, but I'm just saying that was how I was just giving it as a cooperation, saying, okay, the movement needs to be achieved. Gunagrahi Maharaj is GBC there in South America. So if he has dedicated disciples, then he will do a lot more, and he would be able to achieve a lot more for Prabhupada. So instructing disciples to take second initiation from him so that they could surrender to him as well. This is cooperation. I'm just giving an example as to how the thinking process should be, that we keep Prabhupada in the center and start thinking from the perspective of how to cooperate to make Srila Prabhupada's movement, more wonderful than it already is.
Even Bhaktivedanta Maharaj has done it. There was a disciple, he said, please, if you're going to Mayapur, go and take sannyas initiation from Jayapatak. Bhakti, because he has done also 2-3, because this Maharaj himself said to me. So that's why I know he only sannyas.
Basically Bhaktivedanta Maharaj is my Guru Maharaj. I was mentioning about him only.
Yes, yeah. So he Maharaj also has told, his disciples go and take sannyas initiation from Jayapatak Maharaj. Yeah,
because at that point in time, there was a transition that was happening because Guru Maharaj was not well. My Guru Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. Yeah. He was ready to depart from the world, and at the same time, the sannyas disciples were not ready yet because of the process. They have to follow some waiting period. Yeah. So he was instructing them on whom to take sannyas from. because Jayapataka Maharaj was managing Africa at that point in time. Or rather, Jayapataka Maharaj was supposed to manage Africa, but unfortunately, Maharaj also fell very badly sick in 2008. So, so basically what I'm saying is that, that was a little bit of a different circumstance too. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much for that.
Sure. Okay, so there's a question here. I heard that being in Dasya Bhava is enough to serve, but you said our main drawback is that we don't know our relationship with Krishna. So how does Sambandha get revealed when we are not contemplating on it, being busy in seva? Is there any book you suggest to understand the process and to make sure that our experiences are not mental speculation? Dasya Bhava is the fundamental foundation. Dasya Bhava is the fundamental foundation. In Dasya Bhava, when we serve Lord Gauranga, then we will have the opportunity to receive deeper understanding about Sambandha. So Dasya Bhava is a very fundamental foundation. Yeah, everything else contains Dasya Bhava. Sakya contains Dasya. Vatsalya contains Dasya. Madhurya contains Dasya. So Dasya is the foundation, and that is basically the Sambandha which the Diksha Guru gives. When he's giving Diksha, is he practically makes us Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi. It's very foundational. Now, when one focuses on the foundational aspects of Dasya Bhava and serves Mahaprabhu just as much as Lord Lakshman served Lord Ram, Hanumanji served Lord Ram, both were Dasya. They served Lord Ram in such great dedication, not even sleeping and not even eating. That is how we serve Mahaprabhu. Then Mahaprabhu gives us the Sambandha that is required to connect with Radha and Krishna. So before purifying our senses, then the Sambandha itself and purification of senses, specifically when one is living in the West, you need to engage in service. When one engages in service of Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu reveals their eternal Sambandha. We are Kripa Siddhas. We are not Sadhana Siddhas. We are not Sadhakas. Yeah? 64 rounds is not enough. It is not enough. So there is no question of us being accomplished enough to attain pure Sambandha purely based on our sadhana. We attain Sambandha because we serve Mahaprabhu and he becomes merciful and he gives us Krishna Sambandha. To serve Mahaprabhu very efficiently, you need to be in pure, nice, wonderful Dasya Bhava. Krishna consciousness is organic. Just as much as we come into Krishna consciousness, we develop affinity for a certain person, we develop affinity for a guru, and then from that particular process on, organically we proceed further in getting rid of anarthas and settling down in serving further and further. Then that basic aspect of Krishna consciousness comes from Dasya Bhava. The point is that we need to basically focus on Dasya. Then slowly, steadily, the Kripa comes because we are engaging in Dasya very nicely. That's why this Dasa Dasanu Das, Naham Vipro, Nacha Narapatir, Napi Vaishyo Na Shudro, yeah, Naham Grahapatir Vanasto Etirva. Basically, the idea that I am neither in any Varna, neither am I in any ashram. My original identity is as a servant of Radha and Krishna. This is how we basically begin our process. It is Dasya. So when one becomes a wonderful Das or a Dasi, then Mahaprabhu reveals the deeper and deeper Sambandha, gives opportunity, and it is an organic process. This is explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his books. It's an organic process. It is not a process that can be kickstarted. It is an organic process of us being able to reach that point where from one particular source of inspiration, we will get to the other source of inspiration, so on and so forth. It's a step-by-step progress. That is the point. So Dasya is required. So Dasya, one cannot start with Madhurya, especially when we do not know what our relationship is. The most conducive foundational bhava to start is Dasya. So we become a very good servant, then we get promoted and we receive information based on Mahaprabhu's pleasure because we are Kripa Siddhas. We receive things because of Kripa, not because of sadhana, not because of any accomplishment. It is not possible because the gift that's being given in this movement one cannot really equate it with any sadhana that they do, saying that this sadhana will get you this. All the sadhana that we do is to simply position ourselves as good dasa and dasi. That is all we are trying to do. We want to be good dasa, good dasi, so that we can move forward. That is all we are trying to do. And it is actually very important being in the West, and also understanding that it is a very organic process. Depending on Krishna and continuing, everything else will just follow. It's organic. Desiring is good. Desiring that is very good. But it is not something to jumpstart. Very good das and dasi, they will naturally progress on to become whatever else they have to become. I hope this clarifies your question. Okay, so we'll stop here, and then we will take our discussion further in the subsequent session the following week. I was wanting to say that Saki Vrinda Mataji, who lives in New Jersey, she has been assisting me for almost around so many years in setting up the websites and making all the updates, etc. Bhavish Prabhu, who lives in London, he basically updates all the classes. So Saki Vrinda Mataji has basically integrated SoundCloud and YouTube, everything on the website. So I will just give you the website link, and you can check periodically on the website for both accessing SoundCloud and YouTube. And there are some old lectures as well that we gave back in 2015, etc. So I'm very grateful to all the devotees who have assisted us. And I will publish that on the WhatsApp group, and we'll take it further. So thank you very much. We'll meet again the following week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Bol.